Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Grinding Gear Games today put out patch 3.22.1c. Now these patches that have letter designations tend to be at the smaller end, and that's exactly what this one is, but there are a couple of things that are important to know about in there, a couple of quality of life improvements, especially a major quality of life improvement to incubators, which we'll get to in a sec. The first thing that's been added here though, is that patch 3.22.0, Grinding Gear Games added 507 items into the Voidborn Reliquary, and these are now being acknowledged in patch notes because that was something that was left out in 3.22.0. Now there's another 994 being added. So we've got a total of 1,501 more items in the Voidborn Reliquary than we had at the end of patch 3.21, but a third of them were already in the game. Now there is a bit of a difference between early submissions and late submissions to something like the Voidborn Reliquary. Remember that this is only available for people who have bought the highest of the current core packs, but many of the people who have bought the highest of the core packs actually bought it because of the Atlas Hideout, they bought it because of the store points, and the Voidborn Reliquary key for them was a bit of an afterthought. They weren't that interested in it. It was something that was a gift with purchase, and they just threw in something that they thought might be a bit funny. Most of those submissions have already been in the game for a while. I believe the submissions that are getting added now are likely to have more average thought put into each one. This means people will research whether or not their submission is going to be a duplicate of someone else's. If it is going to be a duplicate of someone else's, they're going to be less likely to make it. And additionally, I think that some of the meme submissions that happened early on probably won't be repeated. So for instance, early on, there were a number of unique maps that were added to the Voidborn Reliquary key. There's one of those great jokes the first time it comes up, but I don't think people will be inspired to keep doing it again and again. Now, I could be wrong here. Maybe someone's gone and put every single unique heist contract in the Voidborn Reliquary key as a bit of a laugh. We'll have to see on that. But I believe there's likely to be more thought that gets put into each individual Voidborn Reliquary item that's submitted late than there was into the ones that were submitted early. And as a consequence, they're less likely to be duplicates and they're more likely to be obscure and rare items or extremely high value items. I think we're also likely to see all of the Sanctum Uniques represented in this new batch of 994, although at least none of them have been found in the first couple of hours since the patch went live. Now, if my speculation here is right, and there's no guarantee it is, then this is going to lead to Voidborn Reliquary keys becoming rarer. They definitely felt rarer in patch 3.22 than they did in patch 3.21. That's been my personal experience. It's also been the experience of a number of other people I've asked, many of whom have had more than 10 times as many Divine Orbs drop as they've had Voidborn Reliquary keys. Whereas when Voidborn Reliquary keys were first added to the game, they seemed to be about 4.25, 4.5 times as rare as Divines. Remember, the rarer that the average item inside the Voidborn Reliquary is, the rarer the key itself is going to be. That's something that GGG said in their initial FAQ when they introduced these. So that's enough on Voidborn Reliquaries. Let's move on to some of the quality of life changes that are being made. The next two things are quality of life improvements to group play. Now these will have more of an impact on what I would term casual group play. This is where you group with a bunch of people you don't really know and you just run maps or other content together, and you rely upon the in-game features in order to allocate loot within your group, so you're not having some sort of external agreement like any apothecary that drops we split between us, or alternately that this is an XP leech and all major loot goes to the map opener. You don't have any agreement like that. Instead, you're just relying upon the in-game features to decide how loot is allocated amongst your party. In that situation, these changes should be pretty good. So 4 things are going to change their item allocation settings: logbooks, Atlas memories, divine vessels, and scarabs. These will now respect your choice of item allocation. So if you've set it up so that it is free-for-all, if you've set it up so that it's short allocation, if you've set up permanent allocation, whatever you've set up, you're now going to find that these 4 classes of items will obey that. In the past, logbooks and Atlas memories were always being treated as free-for-all, even if you didn't want them to be free-for-all, and divine vessels and scarabs were always being treated as locked to the map owner rather than being available free-for-all. Something that's important to note here is that map drops remain locked to the map owner. This is because map drops are something that's a little bit unusual in that they don't scale up with the number of players that are in the instance, whereas pretty much all other drops that you get do scale up with the number of people in the instance. The next change is a big quality of life improvement to incubators. So when you go to apply an incubator, you're no longer going to need to mouse over all of the items that you've got in your inventory. Items that already have an incubator applied to them will now display an incubator item in the bottom right corner, so you can see at a quick glance whether or not this is something that you can apply an incubator to usefully. Finally, there's a number of bug fixes. Zesht Ula, the open hand, the weird breach boss, was completely and utterly bugged and was dropping absolutely nothing. I wasn't aware of that because I haven't spec breach for a while, but Zesh'Dula is going to work again, and he's going to drop the loot that they're meant to drop, rather than dropping nothing at all. There's a couple of bug fixes to buffs with counts such as momentum. So firstly, there was a display bug with momentum. It was still functioning properly, but it wasn't showing the count if it was 1, so that's being fixed. And fixing a bug where gaining momentum while channeling a supported skill was not dynamically affecting attack speed correctly, only updating the buff count visual. So basically momentum now works with channeled skills. I'm still not sold on momentum as a support. I don't think it's very good, but you can definitely use it if you happen to get it as a Vaal Implicit Corruption on a weapon. It is useful there, it's just that it's not a great support gem in my opinion, but by all means play around with it. A very corner case bug fix to Corrupting Cry and its interaction with exerted lacerate attacks. So if you've been wanting to play around with Corrupting Cry, but its bugged interaction with lacerate was stopping you, then now you can use this interaction. I think most people aren't using lacerate with it, so it is a real corner case thing, but it is now fixed. Next is probably the least impactful bug fix that I think we've ever seen, and this is that if you are grouped with a Guardian who has spec'd into links and has the Harmony of Purpose node, which is now for links only, and while you're either affected by their link or you are in the beam, you then happen to mouse over the buff description that you get, that buff description is now correct. This is one of the smallest bug fixes we've ever seen, but it's a bug fix nonetheless. Now, damage recouped as mana as a modifier, having the life item modifier tag was a very serious bug that didn't come up often, but when it did, it was really disruptive. The main reason for this is the unique chess piece Utula's Hunger, and that was something that was completely broken by having something with damage recouped as mana. This is now being fixed, and those items will no longer have the life tag on them. This probably doesn't affect many players, but it will be a very welcome change to people who do want damage recouped as mana and also want to use Utula's Hunger together. And the final 3 lines deal with some MTX fixes and an instance crash. All welcome changes, but not very important ones. So all in all, the most important things in these patch notes are going to be the fixes to loot allocation if you're in a group, at least for those of you that play in groups, and for everyone else, it's going to be the Voidborn Reliquary changes and the Incubator changes. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there, but in the bottom left corner of your screen now, I'm going to put up a link to a video that I put out at the end of last league that deals with crafting helmets like this, where you've got 16% of incoming physical damage shifted into another element, something that'll be useful to those of you who are using popular items like Taste of Hate or Lightning Coil on your build. May your Vaal Orbs have interesting results.